Before anything starts, I want to make this clear in a natural way. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not professional advice of any kind, technical, financial, or otherwise. Electricity usage varies from home to home depending on wiring, appliances, and overall consumption habits. So if you ever decide to try anything mentioned here, do your own research first and proceed carefully. Nothing here guarantees specific results, and experiences can differ from person to person. Everything discussed is based on commonly available information, general electrical principles, and widely discussed home efficiency concepts. Now imagine this. You walk into a store or scroll online and you see something unusual. It's small, it's simple. It costs less than a meal, somewhere around $3 to $5. It doesn't look powerful. It doesn't look like something that could change anything meaningful in your home. Most people would walk right past it without a second thought. But then you hear something strange. Some people claim that this tiny item, when used correctly, may help reduce unnecessary electricity waste in certain home setups, not by magic, not by replacing your appliances, but by working quietly in the background. No tools needed, no installation process, no technician. Just plug it in and forget about it. And that's where curiosity starts. Because if something so cheap existed, why isn't it being talked about everywhere? Most households today deal with rising electricity costs. It doesn't matter which country you're in, the pattern is familiar. Bills come in higher than expected. Appliances keep running. Even when you think everything is turned off, something is still consuming power. And people usually respond in the same ways. They think about upgrading appliances, buying energy-efficient refrigerators, switching to inverter air conditioners, installing solar systems, or even calling professionals to inspect wiring and usage patterns. All of these solutions can work. But they often come with one thing in common: cost. Sometimes small, sometimes very large. Now compare that mindset to something costing only a few dollars. That contrast alone is what makes this topic interesting. Now, before going deeper, it helps to understand something important. In electrical systems, especially in homes, not all electricity is used in a perfectly efficient way. Some of it is converted directly into useful work, like spinning a fan, cooling a room, or heating water. But some of it is involved in what engineers call supportive or reactive processes inside certain devices. You don't see it happening, you don't hear it happening. But it exists as part of how electrical appliances function. This is not a flaw in your home. It is just how alternating current systems and inductive devices naturally behave. Now, in large industries and commercial environments, engineers have long studied ways to improve how efficiently electricity is used, not by increasing supply, but by reducing unnecessary internal strain in electrical systems. Over time, this led to the development of different correction methods and devices designed to improve overall electrical balance. You'll often hear technical terms like power factor correction in those contexts. In factories, warehouses, and large buildings, managing efficiency at scale becomes important because even small improvements can lead to noticeable long-term savings. But here's where things get interesting. While industrial systems have had these kinds of solutions for decades, most homes don't actively use or even think about them. Not because they are hidden, but because the scale is different. Home systems are simpler, and the impact of inefficiency is usually spread across many small devices rather than one large system. This is where the 5-trick idea usually enters the conversation online. It's often associated with small plug-in devices or energy-saving adapters that people place into wall sockets. These devices are commonly marketed as helping stabilize electrical flow or reduce wasted energy in certain conditions. Now, it's important to stay realistic here. These devices do not reduce your bill in a guaranteed or dramatic way. Anyone claiming that would be oversimplifying how electricity works. Instead, what some users report is more subtle. Small changes in how certain appliances behave, or slight improvements in perceived efficiency depending on the setup of the home. And that's a key distinction. Not guaranteed savings, not dramatic transformation, but a possible small influence in specific environments. So where did this idea even come from? To understand that, we have to go back a bit in time. In the early development of electrical distribution systems, engineers discovered that certain types of loads in electrical networks could create inefficiencies in power delivery, especially devices with motors or coils. These systems don't just draw power, they also interact with it in more complex ways. This led researchers to explore ways to balance electrical loads more effectively. Over time, this became part of standard electrical engineering practice in large-scale infrastructure. Eventually, commercial products were created to address similar concepts in smaller systems. Some of these made their way into consumer markets, often marketed in simple terms like energy saver or power optimizer. But the science behind them is more nuanced than marketing phrases suggest. The basic idea is not about creating energy or magically reducing consumption. It is about influencing how electrical current behaves in a circuit, especially in relation to inductive loads. To put it in simple terms, imagine electricity as water flowing through pipes. Some appliances use that flow smoothly, Others create turbulence. In large systems, engineers try to smooth out that turbulence to improve overall efficiency. In homes, the same idea exists, but on a much smaller scale. Now, why do inefficiencies happen in the first place? Because modern homes are filled with mixed types of appliances. Refrigerators cycle on and off. Air conditioners start and stop. Chargers draw small but constant power. Televisions, routers, washing machines, all operating in different patterns. This constant switching creates fluctuations in demand. And while your electricity meter measures total consumption accurately, the internal behavior of the system is not always perfectly steady. Over time, this is simply how electrical environments naturally behave. Now, from an industry perspective, it's also worth understanding why low-cost solutions like this don't dominate the market. Large-scale energy companies and appliance manufacturers tend to focus on bigger innovations: new appliance models, smart meters, grid improvements, renewable integration. These are areas where investment is large and impact is measurable at scale. Small plug-in devices, especially those costing just a few dollars, operate in a very different space. They are simple, accessible, and widely distributed, but their impact is usually limited to specific conditions rather than universal results. That's one reason they don't become the centerpiece of energy-saving strategies, not because they are hidden, but because they are not a one-size-fits-all solution. Now, let's talk about how people typically use these devices in real-life scenarios. The process is usually very simple. A person buys one of these small plug-in units. They connect it to a standard wall socket, often in a central area of the home. The idea is that it remains plugged in continuously, working in the background. Some people place it near areas with heavier appliance usage, like kitchens or living rooms. Others simply plug it in anywhere available. There is no setup, no configuration, and no technical adjustment required in most cases. After installation, users simply continue with normal electricity usage and observe over time if they notice any difference in their bill or appliance behavior. And this is where experiences vary widely. Some people claim they notice small improvements. Others see no change at all, and some remain uncertain whether any difference they observe is directly related to the device or other factors like seasonal usage changes. This variability is important because it shows that home energy systems are complex. There is no single variable that controls everything. It also highlights a broader truth. Electricity usage efficiency is influenced by multiple factors at once. Appliance age, usage habits, wiring quality, and even environmental conditions can all play a role. From a scientific perspective, any claim about reducing electricity usage needs to be viewed carefully. Controlled conditions matter. Without them, it becomes difficult to isolate the effect of a single small device. Still, the popularity of these items continues in many places, largely because of their low cost and ease of experimentation. People are often curious enough to try them simply because the risk is minimal. Now, stepping back for a moment, there's a larger pattern here that goes beyond electricity. In many industries, whether it's energy, health, productivity, or even technology, there's often a contrast between expensive, large-scale solutions and small, simple alternatives. Expensive solutions usually come with guaranteed structure, professional support, and measurable engineering. Simple solutions often come with accessibility, low cost, and uncertain but sometimes interesting results. Neither is universally better. They simply operate in different spaces, and that's the real insight. Sometimes, understanding a system is more valuable than chasing a shortcut. Because once you understand how electricity actually behaves in a home, how devices draw power, how usage fluctuates, and how inefficiencies naturally occur, you start to see why certain methods might help slightly, while others are designed for larger infrastructure. Now, before we finish, there's something important to repeat clearly. This is still educational information. There are no guaranteed outcomes here. Any method involving electrical systems should be approached carefully. Different homes have different setups, and what works in one situation may have no effect in another. If anyone ever experiments with such ideas, it should be done safely, with awareness, and without expecting dramatic changes. Research and caution are always important when dealing with electricity or household systems. And finally, if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's this. Not everything that affects your electricity bill is obvious. Some factors are large and expensive. Others are small and subtle. And sometimes, the difference between perception and reality depends on understanding how the system actually works. If this helped you understand something new about how energy use in homes works, feel free to share it with someone who might find it interesting. And for more educational breakdowns like this, focused on simple explanations behind everyday systems, consider subscribing. Because sometimes, the most overlooked ideas are not hidden. They're just misunderstood.